The emergency lights flickered once, twice, then settled into that sickly green hum that makes everything look like a bad dream. Ethan, your tie clip is caught on your lapel. And the manual activation for the East Wing employee elevator is on the lower right panel. You're walking the wrong way. He stopped mid-stride, one hand already reaching for the stairwell door. The voice came from somewhere behind him, low and unhurried, with the kind of casual precision that suggested she'd been watching him for longer than he'd been aware of her presence. The building had gone dark 30 seconds ago, a crack of thunder that had taken out the main grid and left Novateka's 37th floor suspended in that particular brand of silence that only comes when all the machines stop breathing at once. He turned. She was just a silhouette against the emergency exit sign, but there was something in the way she stood, weight balanced, chin slightly lifted, that told him she wasn't an intern fumbling for her badge. "How do you know my name?" "Because I read the memos before I read the personnel files," she said, and there was the ghost of something in her voice. Not amusement, exactly. More like she'd already solved a puzzle he didn't know he'd set. Although, to be fair, the personnel files were more interesting. "Did you know your IT director once held the world record for longest continuous video game session? 68 hours. I think about that sometimes. The kind of focus it takes." He blinked. The thunder rolled again, distant now, moving east over Puget Sound. "Who are you?" "Lumi." She stepped forward, and the green light caught the edge of her jaw, the smooth line of her shoulder. Dark gray suit, hair pulled back in a way that was efficient rather than severe. "The new strategic consultant from New York. You approved my contract 3 weeks ago. Though I suppose you don't remember that part, you were in the middle of the Pinnacle negotiations and your assistant told me you'd signed it between conference calls." He did remember. Vaguely. A name on a page, a budget line item his CFO had pushed through. Another set of eyes on the numbers. That's what they'd told him. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words came out automatic, CEO automatic, the kind of apology that covered nothing. You've been running on 4 hours of sleep for the past 6 days, you haven't eaten since that protein bar at 11:47 this morning, and you just spent 40 minutes on the phone with someone from the board who keeps using the word synergy while meaning capitulation." This time, the silence stretched. The building's emergency systems flickered again, and somewhere below them, a backup generator coughed and died. The green lights dimmed to near darkness. He started. "You're a right thumb," she said. "Every time you say sustainable growth in a public speech, you tap the podium twice. You didn't do it just now, on the phone. So I know you were lying about something. I don't need to know what it is. But I do need you to trust my judgment on the data, not your public relations script." He should have been angry. She just dismantled him in 12 seconds, using observations he hadn't known he was telegraphing. She was a stranger. A consultant. A person whose job description essentially boiled down to make the CEO feel like he's being watched. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Seen. The stairwell door clicked shut behind him, and he realized he'd been leaning against it, his palm flat on the cold metal. Somewhere in the building, a security guard was shouting about the elevators. The announcement crackled over the PA system, "Evacuation by stairs, please remain calm, the backup generator is being repaired." "I need to be somewhere," Ethan said. "Investor meeting. Grayson Holdings. They're the deciding vote on the Pinnacle acquisition," Lumi finished. "I read their file. I also read the 7th-page footnote. The one your legal team flagged as minor compliance issue." She said it the way someone might mention the weather. Completely neutral. Completely devastating. What about it? Nothing that can be explained in a stairwell. She moved past him, her shoulder brushing his arm, and pushed open the door to the emergency staircase. The fluorescent strips along the steps cast everything in a dim, underwater glow. "But if you're not in a rush, I can walk and talk." He followed her. He didn't know why. He had a meeting to get to. The investor from Grayson Holdings was waiting at a hotel downtown, and if he missed this window, the board would use it as leverage to push the acquisition through without his full input. They'd done it before, twice in the past year, small things, subtle things, always with the justification that they were protecting shareholder value. But Lumi's voice had something in it that his board didn't. Clarity. They descended 10 floors before either of them spoke again. The stairs were narrow, the kind of building code standard issue that felt claustrophobic in the dark. Her footsteps were steady behind him, no stumble, no hesitation. She didn't ask him to slow down, even though she was wearing heels that must have cost more than most people's rent. "You're going too fast," she said finally. Not breathless. Just observant. He realized his calves were burning. His vision had that grayish edge that meant his blood sugar was crashing again. He'd been running on caffeine and guilt for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to have a body that required maintenance. "I don't have time. You'll have less time if you pass out on the 15th floor landing and have to be carried out by paramedics." Her voice was calm, practical. "Stop. For 30 seconds. Drink water." He didn't have water. Something cold touched his hand. He looked down. She produced a small bottle from somewhere, her bag, maybe, or the inside pocket of her blazer, and was holding it out to him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I always carry two," she said. "Emergency preparedness." "What are you, a scout?" "I'm someone who knows that tech CEOs are statistically likely to forget basic human necessities during a crisis." She uncapped the bottle herself and pressed it into his palm. "Drink. Then we'll talk about the footnote." He drank. The water was cold and clean, and it tasted like the best thing he'd ever put in his mouth. He was suddenly, acutely aware of how long it had been since he'd done anything that wasn't urgent. How long since he'd sat down to a meal? How long since he'd slept without his phone buzzing on the nightstand? She was watching him with those calm, steady eyes. In the dim light, he could finally see her face properly. Not young, exactly. There was something weathered in the corners of her mouth, a kind of knowing that came from having seen things. But her skin was smooth, her features arranged in a way that was more interesting than pretty, a certain asymmetry to her eyebrows, a slight sharpness to her chin. "7th page," he said, handing the bottle back. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing's wrong with it. The math is fine. The valuation is actually quite elegant." She capped the bottle and tucked it away. "The problem is what they're not telling you about the company you're buying. They've been using a creative accounting method that makes their revenue growth look organic, but it's actually being propped up by a single client relationship. That client is about to announce bankruptcy. Probably within the next 3 weeks." He stared at her. She raised an eyebrow. "I told you. I read the files." "How do you know about the bankruptcy?" "Because I know someone who works in their accounts receivable department. We went to business school together. She sent me a desperate WhatsApp message last week, asking if I knew anyone who might be looking to hire someone with a strong background in financial forensics." Lumi shrugged, a tiny movement that somehow conveyed volumes. "I didn't tell her I was looking at her employer's file. But I did ask a few questions." Ethan leaned against the concrete wall. The building groaned around them, settling, or wind, or the ghost of the thunder that had knocked out the power. "This is insane," he said. "It's consulting." "No." He looked at her. You've been here for 3 weeks. You came from New York. You met my assistant once, by phone. And somehow you've already seen more than my entire board of directors. She didn't answer immediately. She was looking past him into the darkness of the stairwell, and her expression was complicated. I see patterns, she said finally. That's all. The math, the people, the way everyone talks around what they really mean. I'm not doing anything special. I'm just paying attention. That's exactly what's special about it. She turned her head, and their eyes met in the green glow. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the building's emergency lights flickered again, and the PA system crackled to life. All personnel, please proceed to the ground level. The power outage is building-wide. We expect to restore service within the hour. 1 hour, Ethan said. The Grayson meeting is in 40 minutes. You'll make it. She was already moving past him, starting down the stairs again. Give me 3 minutes on the executive summary. I'll tell you everything you need to know to change their minds. He followed. This time, he didn't lead. He let her set the pace, not fast, but purposeful. Her heels clicked on the concrete with a rhythm that was almost musical. He found himself watching the way she moved, the easy flow of her shoulders, the tilt of her head as she organized her thoughts. They're going to frame the acquisition as essential to growth, she said. They'll show you numbers, charts, projections. They'll make you feel like if you say no, you're saying no to the future. That's what they've been doing for months. Then here's what you say back. She glanced over her shoulder, and there was something like humor in her voice now. You say, I've read the comps. I've looked at the market. And what I see is a company that's about to lose its only anchor client. The acquisition might look good on paper, but paper doesn't pay the bills. And if they push back? Then you remind them that the real value in any acquisition isn't the revenue stream. It's the people. The culture. The reason the company exists in the first place. She paused at the next landing, turning to face him fully. There's a reason you started Novatech, Ethan. And it wasn't to buy companies that don't align with your vision. The words hung in the air between them. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle, like sandalwood and citrus. Her eyes were the color of honey, but deeper, with flecks of something darker around the pupils. You did your homework, he said. I always do my homework. Then you know that I've been, he stopped. The word dying floated to mind, then died on his tongue. I've been struggling. I know you've been tired. She said it without pity, without the soft sympathy that made him want to walk away. I know you've been carrying things alone. I know your board doesn't understand what you're actually building here. And you do? She smiled. It was barely there, a ghost of expression, but it transformed her face. I know you wrote a paper about distributed trust when you were in college, she said. I read it. It was idealistic. Naive. And also the smartest thing I've read in a long time. The kind of idea that gets people fired up and then disappointed and then fired up again, because it's true even if it doesn't work perfectly. He opened his mouth. Closed it. She was already moving again, her footsteps echoing in the stairwell. 20 floors to go. The lobby was chaos. Power had been restored 15 minutes after they'd reached the ground floor. A sudden blaze of fluorescent light that had made Ethan blink, made him feel like he'd been pulled from a dream and shoved back into reality. But the chaos was manageable. People were streaming through the doors, executives on cell phones, assistants with umbrellas, security guards directing traffic. And Lumi was gone. He hadn't seen her leave. One moment she'd been there, standing beside him in the lobby, and the next she'd vanished into the crowd like she'd never existed at all. He was left with the memory of her voice, her eyes, the way she'd dismantled his defenses with nothing more than observation. The Grayson meeting was a disaster. Not because he didn't know the numbers, he did, he knew them cold, he knew them from every possible angle, but because his board had already set the narrative. They'd primed Grayson with a one-sided pitch, making him seem like the obstacle, the founder who couldn't let go, the emotional leader who didn't understand business. It wasn't just synergy they wanted. It was control. And he didn't have any evidence to push back. He left the hotel at 2 a.m. The rain had started again, a cold soaking drizzle that seemed to come from every direction at once. He'd forgotten his umbrella. He'd forgotten his coat. He'd forgotten, for a moment, that he was supposed to be a person with needs and limits and a body that required shelter. Instead, he walked. 10 blocks in the rain, his shoes filling with water, his mind churning through everything Lumi had told him. The footnote. The bankruptcy. The way she'd said people, culture, vision like they were real things, not management buzzwords. He ended up at a coffee shop. It was the only place still open on the stretch of street, a tiny hole in the wall with yellow lighting and mismatched chairs and a barista who looked like she'd been working for 18 hours straight. He ordered black coffee. He sat in the corner. He stared at nothing. 20 minutes later, the door opened. She was wearing a different jacket now, a trench coat, dark blue, with water dripping from the collar. Her hair was wet, clinging to her cheeks. She looked cold. "You're going to catch pneumonia," he said. "Probably." She sat down across from him without asking. "Your assistant told me you'd be here. She's very loyal, by the way. You should give her a raise." "I should give her a lot of things." The barista appeared, and Lumi ordered tea. Chamomile. She wrapped her hands around the mug and looked at him across the steam. "How did it go?" "Bad." He laughed, a short barking sound. "They've already got the votes. Grayson is going to approve. The board is going to push it through whether I want it or not." "And you?" "I don't want it." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Everything you said was right. It's not just the accounts. It's the principle. I started this company to build something different, and now they want me to turn it into just another acquisition machine. What's the point of any of it if I do that?" He expected her to nod. To agree. Instead, she tilted her head and asked, "Is that why you were looking at selling?" The question landed like a punch. "I never," you wrote an email. Her voice was calm. "To a friend at a private equity firm. Last year, after your mother's funeral. You said you were tired. You said you didn't know if it was worth it anymore." His stomach dropped. "That's not public information." "I didn't say it was." She met his gaze without flinching. "But those emails exist, Ethan. And if they get out, you've seen them." "I've seen traces of them." She leaned back, the steam from her tea curling around her face. "The friend you wrote to was in trouble last year. A client with unethical practices. He had to share documents with investigators, and those documents included your correspondence. It's buried now. No one's looking at it. But it's there." He felt like he couldn't breathe. "Who else knows?" "No one. Yet." She paused. "But if your board wants to find something to use against you, they will. They'll go through everything, every email, every conversation, every late-night moment of doubt. They'll use it to paint you as unstable. untrustworthy. And then they'll replace you. And you're telling me this because you need to know what you're fighting against. She set down her mug. You're not just fighting a bad acquisition. You're fighting people who want to take control of everything you've built. And if you don't stop them now, you never will. He stared at her. Why do you care? She didn't answer. Not at first. She just looked at him, and there was something in her eyes that he couldn't quite read. Because, she said finally, I've been in your position. Not the CEO part. The part where you've built something and people want to tear it down. And I know what it feels like to have no one who sees the whole picture. You've built something? A company. Small. In New York. She shrugged. I sold it 2 years ago. The buyers wanted to change everything I'd created. I couldn't stop them. But I learned something. What? Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. She smiled, a little sad. But sometimes walking away means losing more than you can afford. You have to know the difference. He didn't know what to say. So he didn't say anything. They sat in silence for a long time, the rain tapping against the windows, the barista cleaning the espresso machine in the background. The world outside the coffee shop was dark and cold, but inside it was warm, and there was something about this moment, the way she sat across from him, the way she didn't ask for anything, that made him feel like he was safe. The next morning, the board convened. Ethan walked into the conference room with Lumi's words still ringing in his ears. The acquisition. The email. The board's quiet maneuvering. He'd been seeing pieces of it for months, but he'd never had the full picture. Now he did. We're moving forward with the Pinnacle acquisition, the CFO said. The numbers are sound. The synergy potential is enormous. And I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're ready to make a decision. The room was silent. 12 faces, all watching him. Ethan looked around the table. His board. His partners. The people he trusted to help him build Novatech into something meaningful. They'd been maneuvering against him for months. Do you want to know what I think? He said, and his voice was steady in a way that surprised him. I think you're running a company with a culture that takes years to build. And I think Pinnacle's leadership is going to destroy that culture in months. I don't want that. I've never wanted that. And I'd be lying to you, and to myself, if I pretended otherwise. He paused. There's a footnote, he said. Page 7. You didn't read it. None of you read it. And it proves that Pinnacle's revenue growth is being propped up by a single client who's about to go bankrupt. The CFO shifted. That's not, you didn't read it. He cut him off. I did. And I'm telling you, as your CEO, that I'm not going to approve an acquisition that I know is going to fail. You can vote me out. You can take my shares. But I'm not going to let you destroy this company for short-term profit. Silence. Then, from the back of the room, a slow clap. Lumi was standing in the doorway. She'd been there the whole time, he realized. She'd slipped in while he was talking, and she'd been watching him with that same calm, assessing look. Nice speech, she said. I like the part about the footnote. Lumi's from consulting, one of the directors said. She's been assigned to analyze the acquisition. But I think the CEO made his point. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the floor. And I think if you vote against him now, you're going to regret it. Not in a bad press way. In a losing everything you've invested way. Because Pinnacle is about to become worthless, and you're all about to show you didn't do your due diligence. She pulled a file out of her bag, physical, old-fashioned, printed on paper. At the bottom of page 7, she said, there's a note. It's a small note, just 2 lines. It says that Pinnacle's biggest client has been in negotiations to settle a massive lawsuit for 6 months. That settlement is about to be announced. And when it is, Pinnacle's revenue is going to drop by 40%. Where did you get that information? The CFO asked. That's not an hour, because I know someone in their AR department, Lumi said easily. But you don't have to take my word for it. I have copies of the relevant documents. She handed the file to Ethan. He opened it. Page 7. There it was, in black and white. The room erupted. For the next hour, the board argued. They shouted. They accused. They tried to salvage the acquisition, tried to find a way around the bad news, tried to make it seem like the footnote was somehow irrelevant. But Ethan didn't engage. He just sat there, holding the file, and let them talk themselves out. Finally, the chairman sighed. So what do you propose, Ethan? I propose we walk away from Pinnacle, he said. We're not buying them. We're not partnering with them. We're going to focus on our own growth, our own culture, our own people. And if anyone here doesn't like that, he looked around the table, meeting each of their gazes, then there's the door. No one moved. Good, he said. Meeting adjourned. Afterward, in the hallway, Lumi was waiting for him. She was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, looking like she just won a chess match she'd been playing for weeks. Well, she said. That was dramatic. You knew about the footnote this whole time. I knew about the possibility. I didn't have the proof until yesterday. She shrugged. I told you. I always do my homework. You also knew about the email. The smile faded from her face. Ethan, you didn't tell me. You asked me about it, and I didn't tell you, and you didn't push. But you knew. I knew it existed. She met his gaze. I didn't know if you were ready to talk about it. And I wasn't going to force you. He stood there in the fluorescent light of the hallway, looking at her. She was so calm. So steady. Even now, even after everything, she wasn't trying to use his vulnerability against him. Why are you helping me? He asked. She was quiet for a long moment. Because you remind me of someone I couldn't save, she said. The person I sold my company to. He was brilliant. Passionate. And he got eaten alive by people who cared more about money than vision. I couldn't stop it then. But I can stop it now. You don't owe me anything. I know. She smiled, and it was tired, and real, and it made his chest ache. I'm not doing it because I owe you. I'm doing it because I want to. He couldn't think of anything to say to that. So he reached out, and he touched her hand. She didn't pull away. That night, the rain had stopped. Ethan stood in the empty stairwell of the Novatech building, in the same spot where they'd first met, waiting for her to come down. The emergency lights were still on, power had been restored, but someone had forgotten to turn them off, and the green glow was exactly as it had been that first night. He heard her footsteps before he saw her. Then she appeared, descending the stairs slowly, one hand on the rail, her face emerging from the darkness. You wanted to meet here? She asked. I wanted to meet where we started. He pulled the tie clip from his pocket. You saw this in the dark. I don't know how you did that. Your cologne, she said. You were wearing it. And the light caught the metal. That's all? That's all. She stepped closer. I told you. I pay attention. To me. She was still for a moment. Then she said, yes. To you. He put the tie clip in her hand. Keep it, he said. Just in case I get lost again. She looked down at the metal in her palm, and then back up at him, and there was something in her eyes that he'd been waiting to see all night. I don't keep things, she said. It's not my style. Keep it anyway. She smiled. And then, before he could change his mind, she stepped into him and pressed her mouth to his. It wasn't a polite kiss. It wasn't tentative. It was full and real, and it tasted like tea and rain and that strange, sudden hope that he hadn't felt in years. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulled her against him, and she let him, her fingers curling into his hair. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. That was, he started. Unexpected, she finished. I know. I was going to say perfect. She laughed, low and warm. You've been spending too much time alone. Maybe. He touched her face, traced the line of her jaw. But I think I just found someone who sees me anyway. She looked at him for a long, long moment. And in the green light of the emergency stairwell, surrounded by the quiet hum of a building that was finally at peace, she said, I see you, Ethan. I have from the first night. He kissed her again. And for the first time in a year, the dark didn't feel so heavy. 3 months later, Ethan stood on the roof of the Novatech building, watching the sun rise over Puget Sound. The acquisition had fallen through. The board was restructuring. And he was finally learning how to trust the people around him, not because they were perfect, but because they saw him. All of him. Even the parts he didn't want to show. Lumi was beside him, her shoulder brushing his. You'll be late for the meeting, she said. I don't care. You always care. Not today. He turned to look at her. Today I'm exactly where I want to be. She smiled. And then, because she was still the same woman who'd walked into a dark stairwell and changed everything, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Good, she said. Because I'm not going anywhere. And in the light of that new morning, surrounded by the city he'd built and the woman who'd helped him save it, Ethan finally believed her. Because some people are just lights in the dark. And Lumi would always be his.
Subscribe to me for more content.